Okay, so first off on the agenda, Nikolai is going to show us his work on the test runner and the matrix visualization potentially of different implementations tests.
Okay, let's start. Can you see my screen? Yeah, so here is a Svelte page. And yeah, I will just make the short demo and then we'll go through details.
Sounds good.
So yeah, I've just added and I'm in the progress to make the playground working. So it's gonna be like resurrection of what Josh did, just maybe with some pre-filled resources so people can just try it quickly. And here is the old page for the tests. Yes, and here is implementation matrix. So yeah, here's a test, and here is just a status, is test passed or not. Then another idea, so when we on a specific test, so maybe we can show here the tabs how different implementation passed it, or you can jump to the specific implementation test results and see these results. But I think comparing it's better, so I will try to create like a tabs here, so you will be able to see if test fails, what results are provided by implementations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, that's the metrics, and I can show how it works internally, and we can discuss details. So the first of all, we have this implementations JSON, which is now located in a test report public, but it could be moved to the root if we decide to do. And I think people can submit implementation details here, like implementation object with the name, URL, description, and this is important part. This is available through the course and HTTP JSON file with the results. And then, yeah, the UI JavaScript will pick it, load it, and draw all this stuff. So the test results example is implemented in a FHIR in our reference implementation. So if we go here, so very quickly, we're running tests and adding the test result, which is now returned by our reference implementation run test, into the object where the file name is a key and the test result is, I can probably just open it to show how it looks like. Yeah. Here is the name of the file. Here is essentially the test by themselves, which contains the section like expected, I think, result section. Yeah, now I just took what Dan did. Yes, I think Dan, it was your commits about these results. We can discuss the final format, but essentially I just visualize now this passed flag. Yeah, but we can work a little bit on the schema of test results. Yeah. And this map in one file can just be published somewhere. I think we will introduce like maybe commit of the test versions, yes, which were run against, and maybe timestamp, maybe other details into this object. Publish it, commit into implementation, and this UI will pick it up and drop. So yeah, so that's all. I'm planning to describe the schema for test results. Yeah, and then we can discuss it. So for now, I just took what we have.
Okay, cool. Looks really cool. Can you go back to the that page? Nice. And hey, Brian. Cool. It's very cool. Like that. Very clean.
And we expect that people will commit through the pull requests implementations.
Right.
If no result URL is provided, then it's just skipped. If the test will be nicely organized, so potentially we will see like feature list which is supported. Yeah. But I think, yeah, so the next focus is going to be on the test. Yeah, I see a lot of tests is done, but yeah, I think we can do even better.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts from the group on this?
Hey, I missed the beginning. How do you get the results from all these different implementations? Do people run them and then commit the results or something?
No, people commit the address of the results. So
Okay.
in a repo, we have a small registry of implementation, which contains this attribute test results URL, which points somewhere where results are published. Yes. And this result should be available through HTTP, and please turn on the course because we are pulling it from the browser. So and through the JavaScript, so the course should be turned on. And they will be pulled every time you just refresh the page. So it's completely single page application. We will probably add again, so like the version and time when the test was run. Yes, there may be some problem when the test will diverge, like tests which were run by implementation and tests in a repo. Yes, but I will think how to handle it. Maybe just visualize that we see all tests from some implementation. But we can start and fix
We
later.
should
Yeah.
we should put clear instructions maybe on that page so people can learn how to add their own test results.
Yeah, I will update README at the core how to add the implementation to the registry and how to publish test results. Yeah, and just
Well, even in the test result page, you could maybe have a link back to the README if you want to add.
Yeah, good, nice idea. Agree. But for now, like the whole cycle is implemented in our reference repo. So we see when we run the tests, it publish test results into test report public test results, because this will be published by GitHub pages into public URL. Yes. So that's how it works for reference implementation. But yeah, but for other implementation tests should be published somewhere else. Yeah, I will describe. And I use the new logo.
Yes.
I think AI is getting better than humans. Okay, that's everything for me.
We like to. Cool. That looks really cool. So a couple of to-dos. There are also GitHub issues around this. I'm just reminding you, Nikolai, the test result standardization and the
Yeah, I just
visualizer, the
did.
single page application site.
Yeah,
So
I just did the half of the work. So when I
yep.
do this instructions and clean up the code, yeah, I will close the issue. Yeah.
Yep. Just reminding you there. Anything else on the test result processor visualization, result standardization, anything like that?
I think when people will try to implement, they will have a lot of questions.
Yeah, sure. Cool. Sounds good. This is great. We've been talking about this for a couple of weeks and exciting to see that progress. Okay, so I think we might want to move on to Greg's work on the FHIR to OMOP mappings. I don't know if everyone got a chance, probably not, to take a look at them. I took a quick scan. That might be worth 5 minutes to walk through and just introduce that to folks, since I know people are interested in that.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, feel free to sort of jump in and ask questions, but I didn't know how to share this in the best way, so I just created a discussion topic in the Git repo for it. So there's a FHIR to OMOP, FHIR path rules example discussion here. It wouldn't let me attach a JSON file, so I just had to kind of inline my raw rules in here. So it's kind of long. Unfortunately, I didn't stick a scroll bar in or anything. I don't know if anybody's better at markdown formatting than I am to make that look nicer. But I also included a CSV summary of these rules, which you can just download because it would let me upload a CSV file. And if you open that, it looks like this. So you can kind of, get a nicer view of, what the parts are that are getting picked out, the target, where they're getting stuck, what the FHIR paths are. There's a little bit richer data in the raw rules because there's some specialized mapping hints and different things. And there's some key mapping going on. Like I maintain a mapping from the source FHIR IDs to the target OMOP keys, since they're auto-generated. So all that gets mapped into a table. And so there's, in some cases for child elements, I have to generate those keys based on maybe like a sequence value and a backbone element, plus the, parent resource ID and things like that. So I don't know if you go digging in there too deep, you'll probably notice some of that stuff. But if you just want to see sort of the raw mappings, the CSV file is a nicer a nicer view than sort of my raw rules view. But yeah, I think a lot of it looks a little bit similar to some of the SQL and FHIR stuff. Like I have these child elements where you guys have been talking back and forth over I don't know, remember what the current name for it is, the unnest logic for child elements, things like that. So I don't know, it'll all probably look pretty familiar, but anybody has any questions on what I'm doing or why or how, you can stick it in that discussion. I should get an email.
Can you walk, can you walk a little bit through the rules and just explain with how it works? So just just interpretation.
Sure. Yeah. So it's a Java interpreter. Basically, it's just a REST service. So you post a FHIR bundle or a FHIR resource to it, and for every resource, it basically iterates these rules. Checks. Find all the rules that are type patient if it's a patient resource, and then it just iterates through these. So it does the rules in order. So the first thing here is going to hit this child element, which basically says, take this child FHIR path. This is going to map to the location table in OMOP. And, this is what I was talking about where I'm having to map keys so I can track updates essentially and, handle updates of records. But yeah, then, just taking from this, sub element, this base FHIR path element, I iterate these. In this case, it's only one because, there's only a single location record for a patient, but in other cases there may be multiples. And just pick out the pieces. I decided to explicitly state context in here rather than just the other attributes, just to, I don't know, make it explicit. That wasn't really necessary. But I give myself data type hints in a lot of cases to know how to handle it. Like there's some codable concept handling and quantity handling and things like that for some of the data types, where the code that interprets these sort of knows what to do. What else is there worth mentioning? This one isn't patient's not too exciting. I guess here's a case where I'm taking a coding value, and here I have a mapping hint of concept map. So this is actually doing a hard-coded mapping from the US core race value set to an OMOP value set or an OMOP concept. The other case that's similar to that is a concept lookup. Here we see for condition code. Similarly here, I have a hard-coded mapping of what the FHIR code system URLs to OMOP vocabulary IDs are. And so this would take the condition code, see that the code system is probably SNOMED or it could be LOINC or whatever it is, would look up to see what's the corresponding OMOP vocabulary ID, and then it just does a select statement to look up what the OMOP concept is for that code, fills in the concept ID from OMOP, etc. Yeah, any questions?
So a lot of stuff around terminology mapping, yeah?
Yeah, OMOP's so relational. There's a lot of database lookups for, looking up child elements, and encounter references to patient, references, location, this and that. So there's a lot of lookups around just looking up IDs. The program keeps basically a mapping of all the IDs, like I said, once they get inserted. And then there's a lot of concept lookups essentially and mapping going on. That's sort of the trickiest parts of it are tracking all those. I guess sort of a more complex case you get into with EOB resources mentioned in the wiki. I can find it.
May use Control F.
Yeah. So like for an EOB, we're trying to expand this out to where we have like a visit occurrence, an encounter parent, and then like the primary diagnosis condition, and then the header level cost for the entire encounter. And then we want line level costs from the EOB, which would roll up to like a procedure or a drug. So we're trying to like expand out a single explanation of benefit into sort of this complex structure of, 2 levels deep in OMOP. And so some of this, like, I don't think this is necessarily standard. I don't know how that everybody would want to expand out an EOB in OMOP like this, but this is what sort of our analytics team wanted. And so like the EOB mappings get fairly complex to maintain all the relationships to get all this information. So there's some aggregation going on. the key mappings are a lot more complex because I have to, like I said, take backbone element like sequences and things like that to append to the parent ID to basically create keys. I can correlate to OMOP ID since I'm creating so many multiple OMOP records out of a single FHIR resource, things like that. So if you scroll down to the EOB records, which are nearly at the end. Well, it's probably easier to see in my OMOP rules here. You'll kind of see all this, like where we've got the parent elements, and then we've got, the visit occurrence, like I said, was the parent, and then we've got procedure occurrences, which are one child. So there's a child element specified here, and then the attributes that are pulled off of that, which are mixed between the context of the FHIR path and then the parent resource essentially. And so for the drugs, you get this child FHIR path for any item that has a NDC code essentially is assumed to be a drug. So yeah, it gets into some sort of more complex things, having to figure out what type of EOB.item it is to figure out how to categorize it and which table to stick it into and these different things. So probably hard to catch that, just me talking about it, but if anybody cares to dig into it, it may or may not make sense.
Yep.
Great. Any questions on this? I'm kind of wondering about, potentially next steps. Obviously, there's a FHIR to OMOP, group of people who work on that as well. I think Graham was interested, so maybe next time when we get a chance to speak to Graham or have a discussion online as well, I'm curious what people's use cases are for this as well.
Yeah, I would love to
want to go.
Yeah, I would love to try to map at least some part of this logic to view definition. So, and this is a good starting point. So I will probably pick some resources and try to map them and see what we can do. I definitely see that it's going to be multiple stage process in SQL and FHIR. So initially, like prepare like pre-flattened table, then maybe join and implement other more complicated logic like mapping concepts through SQL.
Is this
I guess the other thing
spreadsheet?
would be interesting to see. I don't know, you guys have a subset of FHIR path that's supported, as I understand it. So it may be interesting to see what I'm using that's not in that subset. Like I thought I heard you guys say if statements.
I've seen union, yes, and if, so that's what we not specified, and the union like pipe.
And I don't know if you guys are supporting aggregates, but I've got some aggregates in here for costs in different places.
That's probably what can be done on SQL level, like a second step. Yeah, but this is interesting to try to implement. Yeah, because so at least my vision that we can produce some flat tables and then like in DBT style do like another level of transformations, joining and some logic and aggregation quite easily maybe can be done on SQL side.
Yeah, let me see if I can get one of these out. Yeah, here's one. Yeah, trying to sum these totals essentially.
I see Brian has his hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is this spreadsheet rules, is this conventional or standardized, or is this just something that you're using kind of internally?
This is a internal component I wrote. We needed to do FHIR to OMOP and we couldn't find anything that did it. And we started sort of similar time that FHIR on SQL kicked off. And so I saw a lot of similarities. I kind of joined the group to, I don't know, see what y'all were up to, share what I was up to, etc.
But as I understand, the JSON is a source of truth, yes, and this
yeah,
CSV...
the JSON is a source of truth. I just wrote a little utility that would extract my JSON out to a simpler format for the CSV format, just so it's easier to sort of read for documentation. But yeah, I mean, so far it works pretty good. It's really chatty with the database, obviously, so it's not super fast, but we've processed 30 million or so records through it in a handful of hours, so it's not horrible.
But potentially, if it will be translated to like view definition and some advanced engine will be used, it can be much faster, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd have to do it in two steps then, like you said. We'd have to sort of have an intermediary format and then go do all sort of the OMOP lookups and mappings and things like that in a second step, which makes sense. Like that makes sense, but this sort of all does it in one pass essentially.
Yeah, to that point, Nikolai, I think what might be interesting for the SQL and FHIR community at large is a kind of tutorial or documentation about this sort of multi-step process, right? As you can see that, the assumption here would be that, there be multi-step, maybe some pre-flattened tables as you imagine, then SQL and FHIR using the view definitions, and then even maybe a post-processing step here. So it's like, a true sort of pre, middle, post pipeline. And I think that would make a really interesting tutorial. So just keep that in mind while you're doing it. You don't have to do the whole thing eventually, but documenting that in those steps could be very enlightening to folks thinking about implementing something like this that requires, not just straight, okay, here's FHIR, here's the flattened version of that.
Yeah, I
think,
like how DBT do this, so I would love to try like do it in DBT steps. We flatten, then go through the DBT models like hierarchical and try to build. Well, sorry, Craig.
Yeah, I think Microsoft is working on something similar, and I think they're loosely basing it off of SQL on FHIR, but where they can sort of define these DSLs that extract data out to a silver layer, and then they would convert from there to a gold layer, one of which is going to be OMOP. So they're sort of working on a parallel thing that's also very similar to, seems like what all of us are working on. So I don't know where that is in maturity right now or not, but maybe worth mentioning.
Yeah, maybe Josh will join the next meeting and share the progress. And maybe we can invite the guys who are working on this directly.
Yeah, certainly if it's ready to be, revealed publicly, I'm not sure, but yeah, you can reach out to Josh.
And for me, it's the next big topic for SQL and FHIR, because I think we probably may try to reinvent DBT in the FHIR style, and maybe that works. So
I guess the only other thing worth noting here is that I guess it won't affect you guys. The order of operations is important for me. Like here's observation, right? And I'm just pulling, observations into a parent table. But for components, I have to process the parent observation before I can process the components so that I can fill in the parent key into the children, essentially. Like it creates a blood pressure observation would create 3 records in OMOP for me. So it'd create a parent measurement record with the blood pressure panel and then 2 child measurement records that point to that parent. That's not the way everybody would do it, probably, but maybe something else sort of to, I don't know, worth mentioning.
but I think the view definition covered this use case. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have to worry about something else pre-generating keys for you on the other end immediately, yeah, that sort of goes away.
All right. So I think this will be an interesting exercise, certainly, to look at pipelines like this. I'll ask Josh if some folks from Microsoft would be interested in joining one of the calls to show a little bit of their thinking and how they're laying out some of their tooling, certainly. We'll see if they're ready to share. Next up, any other questions on that? Okay, then let's talk about the big topic of this week, and that is structure, column structure. Ryan, I know you have a PR out for that. Has everybody taken a look at it? Everybody has, and everybody likes it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's an ongoing conversation in the Zulip on that. So yeah, I mean, and I think I kind of posted, obviously the link to the PR, I can add it to the chat here as well, and we can take a look at it. But yeah, it might be worth kind of talking through any sort of clarifying questions or any alternative approaches we should consider in that space. But yeah, here
I was thinking it might be helpful to see the before and after for folks that aren't as deep into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the one kind of unfortunate thing about the, so actually I can maybe just do the screencast here. It might be easier to see the before and after. So I'll find the examples here. Yeah, here, let me just present a tab. And so just showing from the Zulip conversation. So I guess this is the after, and I mean, and really the before would be, actually it's ordered a little bit differently, but in the before would be over, I guess in this example, that, so I'm not sure how useful that is in order to compare. Maybe I'll just, it might be easier just to kind of look at the specifics. So really the only kind of, the key change was that the select structure in its current form, prior to this is doing basically combining a bunch of, it was kind of playing two significant roles. Like there were several fields in there that was very specific to, that should only be populated if you had like the select expression was for a specific column, and then there were other fields there that would apply if the select expression was for like a nested for each or that sort of thing. And so it was like one structure kind of doing two distinct roles. And you have to know like which subset of fields should be set depending on the role that's being used there. So essentially all this change does is essentially takes the fields that are specific to using a specific column and put that in a column nested structure. So basically the select has a nested structure for column now for those specific things. The other thing I did is that select is now at the top level, you can have multiple selects. So here's our flattened patient address example. So we have one select to get the column for the patient ID from the resource key, and then another select, so it goes for each address and gets all the columns for each address there and enrolls that there. So I think this is the most straightforward example of what's changed. In the before model, unfortunately, this doesn't render greatly, but in the before model, and this is over what's up on the IG right now, it's like for some reason the IG publisher, when it runs the fish, like puts the fields in a different order, which is technically correct, but is kind of annoying and hard to read. So that's why you see some of these pushed down to the bottom. But actually, I'm looking at the wrong example here. Let me look at if we look at like the patient addresses. So in the previous model, this is done like you had that select, and then the columns were directly in line in the select, and then you could use a nested select in order to get for each address. Like I said, this is rendered in a surprising order, but that's an artifact of the IG publisher tool, and then you can select the columns there. So I think that's the main things. And then and so essentially this allows us to kind of create a stronger sort of structure definition. And all of this is in actually I can just bring up the pull request as well, so we can see the actual structural changes. But maybe I can bring up the pull request, we can look at the structural changes, but while I do that, I'll pause for any sort of thoughts or questions or anything in that space there.
So essentially we're just grouping columns under the object under the columns key, yes? Yeah.
And that way when we have like the structure definition for it, we have a column structure definition that has only the column elements, and they're all sort of nicely cohesive. And then we still have the select, or I'm sorry, that's not the column element definition within the structure definition. It's nice and cohesive, just has the columns needed there. And then the select element definition similarly only has the columns needed in that space. Yeah, it's just taking the subset of columns that are specific to only having a single column value and putting that into its own element definition to sort of make sure and that saves us the select element definition from kind of doing two distinct jobs, which I think could be confusing for folks. And here, I'll ping the PR to chat here just so folks can look at it if you haven't seen it.
We can kind of formulate it like, so we highlighting the columns and make them like more explicit, yes?
Yeah, make it a little bit more clear there. So
but we're paying with the extra nesting a little bit,
so there is some, but interestingly though, because in many cases it doesn't add much nesting, and partially that's because like in this example, since we support multiple selects at the top level, so this sort of column list is not any further nested than it was previously. It's because previously it would have been embedded in a top level select, but you could actually still do that here. But in this case, you can just, I found it convenient to have like one top level select that has no for each, just get the things there, and then another top level select that has the for each that kind of selects the items like for address there. And so this keeps it yeah, it doesn't add a whole lot of nesting to it, but in other cases it does add some nesting. But yeah, so if I can bring up we can look at the actual pull request and in terms of the structure definition change. So if we look at the FHIR shorthand, I mean, so essentially, yeah, in the pull request, we've essentially created this. Actually, this is the examples. Let me look at the model here.
Ryan, I don't know if you want it, but I linked to the rendering of this branch in the Zoom chat.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, okay, nice. Oh, actually, yeah, nice. I actually did not realize that the branches were actually rendered like that. So that actually is quite helpful. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, so I think that the change here is essentially this column structure emerged.
But Ryan, we don't see it, so you're probably
yeah.
sharing different screen.
Yeah, sharing the wrong tab here. Let me throw out my tab. All right. Okay, so hopefully this is the right tab now. So essentially, the change was to like kind of take these columns, and I mean, all of these fields were nested under the select, along with the other for each and for each or null and the nested select. So this basically took those fields and put them in a separate column, because it got pretty complicated to look at all of these things in a single select and sort out what makes sense and when you should use those and when you shouldn't. So that's kind of the essence of the change.
Any thoughts from the group? I think most of folks on the call commented on the in Zulip, but any thoughts sort of seeing it live?
I think ChatGPT, at the bottom of the chat, there is a link to ChatGPT when I ask it reinvent like what we're doing. And that's funny that the first version was like John proposed at the first call. So the second version was exactly what like Graham proposed, and yes, and shaped by Ryan. And after that, I asked, I should ask ChatGPT to make the version we had. He made some compliment to that version, but okay, but still, I agree. So if ChatGPT decided this is good, maybe this is a good. At least that this is more natural for programmers to see. Yeah, just read it. It's really funny. I was really impressed by ChatGPT. So he did what we like discussed many meetings in a few minutes.
Just let ChatGPT, our AI overlord, just make all the decisions for us. So I think that's the answer. It was very long. I didn't read the whole thing, but it looked really cool, honestly.
Yeah, you can go through the examples. Yeah, but that's funny. I think we should test our spec against ChatGPT.
Make this better, right? Just give them the structure definition and then make it better.
It can, at least it can provide explanation. I think this is a very important part. So if you read through this ChatGPT chat, it provides explanation how it works, and it's quite detailed.
Yeah, it's very cool. I should read it. Josh did have a serious question in the chat about column order. And he says, if you guys haven't read it, would we specify something like the columns all get processed first and then the nested selects? So that's order of execution.
Yeah, well, I guess, do we want to specify a column order? And if so, is that the kind of thing we would have to write to do it?
I think it's quite natural. Now we kind of break the column order if we compare with the previous version. That's what I claimed in the chat. Because before you can mix like for each and columns in any order. Now the columns kind of unmixed, so they should go first or further. But maybe this is not critical to having order. It looks like more SQL-ish, like more flat tables. So if you can produce this order, but maybe it's not required. I don't know. Yeah,
so I think we could still get that behavior by the nature. It will be a little bit more nested, and by virtue of having multiple, by the fact that select is a repeated field. So you could have a select that grabs a column, and then another select that does a for each, and then another select after that grabs a column there. So you can still preserve ordering. It would look a little bit awkward and that sort of thing, but it's still expressible in this setting. I mean, I think it's just a question of how much do we want to define in terms of the spec behavior through that? I mean, so I guess like I mean, I think what Josh describes makes sense to me is like, where we would define like, columns for, it's basically selects get processed in order from top to bottom, parent to child. Columns within a select always get processed before subselects. And if you really want to do a column and then a select in another column, you can break it out into 3 distinct selects. And so that should all be doable. So do we want to specify that? I think that probably makes sense to specify.
I just got one more motivation for that. So if we eventually specify like CSV mode when you producing not like JSON objects, but CSV style rows, yes, maybe separated, commas separated, tab separated, then the order becoming quite important. And I can imagine that some engines may do this, maybe for performance. They just don't spend a lot of space on the column names. So if we expect that we may kind of specify CSV mode as output for the engines, so then maybe we should specify the order. And it looked quite natural. Yes, we have order in our DSL. Why not preserve it?
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me, and I can add a little section to the view definition notes in order to, that's published as part of the IG to reflect that. I mean, I guess, and I can update the existing pull request for that. I mean, do others, but maybe I'm jumping the gun there a little bit. Does that make sense to others? I see people nodding, so sounds good.
Yeah, I think that's a strong use case for preserving ordering and defining that in the spec, what the implementations should do in terms of ordering. All right. Any other thoughts on column structure while we're here? Josh is saying only other tricky part is when a column key sits next to a sub-select key. As long as we pin this behavior down, I think we're good.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. We'll try to make that explicit. Sounds good. Okay, so the PR, I mean, I'm happy to continue chatting about it in the remaining 10 minutes. The pull request is up. I feel like maybe I need, so I'm going to expand a little bit with sort of this ordering discussion. And then I might try to expand some examples a little bit in terms of like the behavior of like repeated selects and that sort of thing. I feel like that may be a little bit underspecified. So I'm happy to spend some time doing that, assuming that this group has like, it does take a bit of time to navigate that. So if this group feels like this is the right direction, I'm happy to do so. But if you feel like there's other structures, please share that perspective soon so we can adjust rather than going down the wrong path here.
Everyone on the call good with this direction? I think that's a yes.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, so do I. I was taking a look at it again. Yep. Good.
And Ryan, maybe try to use ChatGPT to explain all this stuff. It's quite boring to write it. No.
Gonna go straight into the doc. Josh asks, anyone interested in updating the reference implementation as part of this PR, or should we merge first?
I like trunk only.
I guess I'd be inclined. I mean, I think it's okay to merge first and then fix that. I probably personally will not go through and update the tests and the test engine as part of this. But if others want to, we can use this as a development branch. At the same time, I'd be fine with just, because it's still the kind of early days, we merge the trunk. And then if there's a volunteer or volunteers to update the reference implementation and tests to follow, I think that makes sense.
I'm happy to help with that. I don't know that I can do all the tests by myself, but I'm pretty time constrained over the next couple weeks. So I think it's probably worth making sure the spec reflects our latest thinking and not holding that potential. I mean, I guess what I would propose is that we make sure the spec reflects our latest thinking and not hold it on kind of getting all the tests and the reference implementation up to date if that's going to take longer.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Okay, so
I want to add a note though. I'm sorry, just last point actually, because I could see people getting tripped up on this, and so we may want to add a note that the tests are not currently up to date with the latest version of the schema, just so maybe somewhere in the README, just so that, or in the IG until we get that synced up.
I can fix reference implementation quickly in a couple of tests.
Okay, that sounds like a task. So consensus or decision, Ryan will update the spec, and then Nikolai will take a crack at updating the reference implementation and the tests. And we'll add a note that the tests are not currently up to date with the spec. And then, as you guys are doing, just, announce that you're doing this work and, invite people to join on Zulip. Possibly other people would want to help out with updating the tests, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll probably have update. I don't think I'll have time today, but I think that I'll try to update the PR probably tomorrow or Thursday at the latest. But yeah, I'll post updates on the Zulip as I go.
Super, great. Yeah, and as I was looking through it myself yesterday in detail, I like this because it separates the projection part from the sort of column definition part. So I think it makes a nice split between those two. I think it's better to process conceptually as well. So I do like it. Cool. So that was our 3 topics, other than, of course, logos. Anything else? There's sort of a grab bag. I wasn't sure where the regex conversation landed. I think it just needs to be fixed, if I'm not mistaken. I know you guys were chatting about that today.
Yeah, I think
sort of
Brian wrapped
minor.
off, but yeah, it's just a minor tweak. I think the regex isn't right and just needs to get fixed to align
Got
with
it.
what we wanted to do.
Yep. Okay. And then Josh, before we came, we wanted Graham to be on the call to talk about some of his thoughts in the IG publisher workflow. I don't know if you have any comments for this group on that.
No, I'm not sure what the comments were.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. So I think Graham had some questions about it. Like it was pretty open-ended, but anything on your mind, Josh, in terms of topics you want to discuss?
Nothing that I think will treat well in 3 minutes.
Huh. Are we down to 3 minutes already? Yeah, okay, awesome. Lost track of time there. All right. Logo. I think we're aligning on the latest logo from Josh, with the balloon having a FHIR image on it. So everyone good at that? Ryan is a thumbs up. I think Nikolai is a thumbs up. I think I saw. So
Yeah, I
Cool.
like. I think we can still master it through some designer manual work, but yeah, I like it.
Right.
That one was a DALL-E 3 take.
What program do you
yeah.
use, Josh, to draw this stuff?
The most recent one was DALL-E 3. The previous one was ideogram.ai.
Very cool. Awesome. I think we're making important progress on the logo.
Logos to the list, cache invalidation, naming things and logos maybe.
It's a good one. It's a good one. I like it. Cool. Any last topics, or things we should be thinking about for upcoming week from anybody? No? All right. I think we'll call it a day. There's still a bunch of GitHub issues out. I think going through those, taking a pass, if you get a chance, asking questions or cleaning up from them, I think that would still be useful. And if we have time next week, maybe we'll go through some of them as well. All right.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Nothing else? All right.
Thank you, guys.
Good seeing you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.